It is being bold, it is being brilliant, it's being non-apologetic about what we're doing.
We had to leverage those abilities and just to come to the table and execute like never before.
Bring in capable people, coach them, make sure they're connected to the outcome, and let them run.
As a leader and with your team, have to have the will to win.
Connecting more with our humanity and, pausing for a moment to be the human beings that we are.
But with humility, you know that you can leverage that skill set that people have and let them be their best.
This will be a time of innovation.
Hi, and welcome to Courageous Leadership in Times of Global Crisis and Uncertainty, an HMG live virtual briefing covering what matters most to drive a winning agenda and make the future a better place.
Hi, and thank you for joining us this morning for the 2020 Boston CIO Virtual Summit. I'm Tom Hoffman at HMG Strategy. So we're delighted to have you here this morning. A warm welcome from our team and each of the speakers. And I wanted to thank our partners for all their support in helping to support today's summit. Our partners for today include Illumio, Nutanix, Zoom, Adobe, and Fortinet. Thank you so much for your support. You've been wonderful partners to work with and very progressive. So we've had a number of virtual events since the pandemic went into full force in early March. We hosted 10 virtual events in the first 30 days. And over the next 2 months, we have more than 40 events lined up, including virtual CIO summits, CISO summits, as well as webinars and other events. So stay tuned and please stay with us. We also have a number of events coming up in the coming weeks. Next week, we have the Chicago Virtual CIO Summit on June 2nd. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. We have an important CISO summit coming from Washington, D.C., with a very impressive list of speakers from both the public and private sectors who will be talking about the role of CISOs in helping to move the business forward and to reimagine the business, as well as to help address the future of work. I think it reflects how the role of the CISO has really evolved in recent years, and especially as we're seeing in this current crisis that we're going through. So thanks again for zooming in. And at this point, we'd like to kick off the event. I'd like to invite Sebastian Goodwin to join us. Sebastian is Vice President of Cybersecurity at Nutanix. Sebastian, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you. So Sebastian, to get started, could you just share with us a little bit about your background and your role at Nutanix?
Sure. So my name is Sebastian Goodwin. Nutanix is a software company. We've got about 7,000 remote employees now around the globe. We're a software company with over $1 billion revenue operating globally. And so it's my role to keep our infrastructure, which consists of our own data centers, public cloud infrastructure in multiple clouds, a true hybrid environment. It's my job to keep all that secure.
Excellent, thanks.
Hey, Sebastian, I did a little research on you, which I like to do with all of our guests, and a little review. Your background is amazing. Let's walk us through your background, because you're really, truly a thought leader, a sought-after keynote speaker, as well as advisor, and you've authored 2 books.
Yeah, well, let's see. My background in security goes all the way back to like high school, where I was, trying to hack into our computer systems, and giving my computer teacher a hard time. But over the years, I've spent time in consulting with a number of organizations, IBM Global Services and others, and CISO at a couple of companies. I also teach a course in managing cyber risk and a new master's degree in cybersecurity program at UC Berkeley, which has been really interesting to help create that program and create that course. And yeah, like you said, over the years, I've written some books in cybersecurity on the technical side of things as well.
little advice for folks? You have such a diverse background. It's to see somebody who's put together a career ascent with so many different industry data points.
Advice? Well, I try to get different angles on this cybersecurity industry. And one part of my background that I didn't mention is that I also spent a few years working in the marketing department, which I never thought I would do. But I led a product marketing team at Palo Alto Networks for a few years that focused on our launching a new endpoint security product. So, really my goal in my career has been to not stay in the IT department the whole time, but to spend some time as a consultant, trusted advisor, sometime in the IT department, sometime on the product side of things, launching products and launching go-to-market, and a little bit of time in academia.
Excellent. So when you think of leading Nutanix's security efforts in the whole work from home initiative over the past 10 weeks, what were the lessons learned and what worked?
Yeah, so a number of lessons learned. Our priorities when we made this shift was really about enabling everyone to work from anywhere, any device, seamlessly and very rapidly. We, like most companies, we had some remote access capabilities already in place, but we had to instantly pivot to supporting at scale 100% of our workforce working remotely. And so we focused on making it easy with things like we have a Nutanix Frame desktop as a service, which gives people the ability to use any device to access a virtual desktop from anywhere. So we had to quickly scale that out, make it available to everyone, and in multiple regions. Because one of the things about virtual desktops is some folks want one that's local to them for performance reasons, and other folks want one that's actually local to the applications, resources, servers that they need to access. And so what we ended up doing was creating a bot in Slack where somebody can just go in there and say, hey, I need a virtual desktop. And it responds and it says, well, which region do you want it in? Do you want it in APAC, EMEA, Americas? And they can just click on one and it says, well, here you go. I just provisioned it for you. So it's those types of quick, simple interactions for our employees that we wanted to create. And really with a focus on our frontline, our employees who support our customers, because obviously our customers are also going through these rapid transitions and we have to be there for them. So, our first objective there was to make sure that our support was able to operate, without any downtime.
Sebastian, have you ever seen such a fast pivot to another architecture that needed to be safely secured, number one? And what were the lessons learned?
Yeah. No, so I haven't seen such a rapid pivot like this. And one of the things we learned was that we really need to think about which tools in our environment and which processes gave us resilience, which ones were resilient. Those are our bright spots that we need to focus on and say, here's something that worked. And on the flip side, what are some of the tools and processes that became liabilities throughout this process? And we focused a lot in our security operations center on resilience, which tools are working for us, shifting from this brand new SOC actually that we had just built, one of those security operations centers with all the nice big screens on the walls and the dashboards, and then all of a sudden we can't work there anymore, right? So people are home. And so what are the tools and processes in that SOC that we're able to quickly flip over? And those are the things that we've learned to focus on. We've also learned during this crisis that we can't miss a beat in the SOC, in security operations. We can't take a few days off to kind of reconfigure things, right? Some of the folks in the audience might know that a few weeks back, there was a big vulnerability announced in popular software that a lot of companies use called SaltStack, right? So, in the midst of this pivot of our SOC, we had to deal with that, and teams had to react very rapidly. So if you were kind of in the middle of reconfiguring your SOC and getting people adjusted to work from home, and you missed that alert, or you missed the ability to respond to it very quickly and patch it, that caused a lot of companies to have a crisis within a crisis now, because their systems are getting compromised. So we had to really stay on top of that. Another lesson learned that I find interesting is that during this time when our offices are empty for the most part, it's actually a really interesting time for security teams to look at the network traffic going in and out of these offices, right? It's a very unique opportunity to see a quiet network. And we're always looking for needles in haystacks in the security field, but now you've got most of the noise out of the system, because you don't have a bunch of employees there with their day-to-day web traffic. And you can look for things like rogue devices. You can look for, does one of our TVs in the conference room or the conference room phone systems, is it acting strangely on the network? Because that can be indicators of malware. And these systems do get compromised. So it's a great opportunity to do that as well.
Sebastian, thanks so much for coming on the program today. It's what a challenging time. Nutanix has been a great partner of HMG and the HMG platform and network for community for years. Really appreciate your support in the events powered by Nutanix and our other partners here today. Give us a ray of hope. Is this an exciting time to be a tech leader?
Yeah.
The most interesting time?
Yeah, it's a really interesting time. And I've seen some really amazing things coming out of our teams. One thing that I found really uplifting is some teams within Nutanix and even collaborating with some of our customers have been involved in an initiative called Folding at Home. And this initiative basically allows you to donate CPU resources from your infrastructure, even from your own laptop, toward medical organizations that need that CPU resource to find vaccines for things like COVID, right? And so they're pooling resources, and it's really interesting to see the teams come together, and there's a scoreboard, and for sometimes the Nutanix team was up there pretty high. And that's been really fun to see.
Hey, Sebastian, thank you so much for coming on today's program. Great job. Looking forward to more experiences and meetings with you in the future. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Next up, Mike Mastrole. Mike's got an amazing background. He's the Senior Director of Systems Engineering of Illumio. Mike, welcome to the program. There's a common theme here today. You there?
Yes, definitely a common theme. Obviously people are worried about lateral movement. They're worried about, this during crisis times like these, where a lot of people have literally taken an Ethernet cable out of the office and extended it to everybody's homes, right? So a lot of worries at interesting times like this as we have mass transformation in our compute.
Hey, Mike, a little bit about your background. It struck me as I was reviewing some notes. You have an amazing background and diversified background that really kind of ideally positions you in an industry that really needs brilliant world-class communication and effective leadership. Some thoughts on your background and how it helps you in how you execute every day at Illumio.
Yeah, so my background to this point, working for companies, that basically I was involved in selling reactive security technologies to customers. And what I found over time, and if you take a look at where I've worked, I was selling products that dealt with the fact that intruders were already in the network. Customers were inundated by millions and millions of alerts, and they're just struggling to keep up, right? And what I like about Illumio is it's a proactive approach to kind of stop lateral movement. And we're trying to get to a point where we can get customers to a point where they don't have to they can live in a world where they don't have to imagine high profile breaches, right? That's kind of our mission here.
Love it. Love it. A little bit more about Illumio. Size, context, years, publicly traded?
So Illumio is a private company. I've been with Illumio for 6 years now. We started off, take a look at some of our customers, companies like JPMC, ServiceNow, BNP Paribas. A lot of companies that decided to basically go down the road to do segmentation. And segmentation basically is the process where security infrastructure teams begin to separate environments or high value applications from the rest of the environment. So when a breach happens and there is a lateral movement, they can make sure that those things are kind of contained and those high profile applications are not compromised.
And that's important because it's a safe and secure enterprise, right?
Yeah, I mean, it goes to the same approach as when submarines were built, right? It went on the premise of when we have a leak, we have watertight compartments, right? And then we can kind of contain that leak to one compartment and we can continue to sail on the mission versus, okay, abandoned ship, right? So that's kind of the approach that we're seeing companies take nowadays. We're seeing companies do it because—
this isn't a new trend though, right? It's been around for a while.
It has. In the past, what we've seen is, we've done it using, traditional methods like VLANs, subnets, zones, SDN, hypervisors, things like that. But what I've seen in my experience in speaking with security architects is they struggle using those traditional methods.
So what's unique about Illumio's approach? If it's been around for a while, you obviously have a unique position.
Yeah, so what we do is we gather information from the applications directly, which is the best source to gather them from, right? So we know what processes are in the listed state, what's communicating inbound and outbound from each server. And then what we do is we build a map. And that map is a logical map. So whether you have compute that's running in the public cloud, on a bare metal server, in a container, or on a virtual server, it's a logical map. And that we basically give our customers that map and the ability to use natural language policy to say that my web server could talk to my application server could talk to my database server, and we calculate what the policy should be, and we deliver it directly back to that server and instrument it into the firewalls that our customers already own, which is the firewall that's on every one of those servers.
So you mentioned a couple of tier one companies. Obviously, you guys are doing some incredible work.
Yeah, what's interesting in my career here is early on, there were some big financial organizations that took the ride and went along on the journey with Illumio because we are solving a real problem of theirs, right? They assume breach, right? And then from there, they're thinking about we have to protect what is real critical for our customers, real critical for our partners. And then from there, figure out that how do we make sure that, we gain their trust, right? And make sure we protect their data.
What are the challenges with segmentation?
The challenges I find with segmentations is that, I'm trying to unwind 25 years of muscle memory where companies try to do this using firewall subnets, VLANs, and zones, right? And the problem is they don't have a map. And then they write on a Saturday night what I call a permit and pray firewall policy. Like, they're trying to secure an application that somebody developed that no longer works for their company, right? So what happens is they try to write that policy. They think they got it right. They implement it on Saturday or Sunday morning at 1 a.m. and they pray to God that it works on Monday morning, and they have some sort of emergency backup procedure when they break the application. And they go through enough of this pain until they realize there's got to be a better way, right? And they do it using a host-based overlay solution, which is less risky because we have a safe, simple way to approach to get to enforcement.
Does segmentation slow down the network applications?
No. So the nice thing about the way we do our segmentation is that I worked at Cisco for several years, right? And the one thing I always learned working at Cisco was when we build a network, we want to get a packet from point A to point B as quickly, reliably, and as resiliently as possible, right? And to try to do segmentation using the network, you're trying to do the opposite of that, right? So using our approach, we can say to the networking teams, continue to build a quickly, highly reliable, resilient network, and we'll overlay segmentation on top of that at the host level. And then what winds up happening is it actually is much more quickly and safely. So I have customers that will bring down 20,000 servers on a beginning of a weekend because they want to save on Amazon EC2 compute costs. And they'll bring up 20,000 servers towards the end of the weekend. And our security policy actually follows that model instantaneously. So it actually accelerates the compute and application performance.
Interesting stuff. How does Illumio help organizations achieve that segmentation, that ideal state?
Well, the one thing that we have at Illumio is, we have customers and a customer success team that's world class. I mean, we've worked with customers that use automation with things like Puppet, Ansible, and Chef, right? So like real progressive tools. And then we have companies that use like Blade Logic for automation, right? So we've worked with some real companies that are really not DevOps focused and some that are highly DevOps focused, and we can help shepherd them through the process. So that really is the value we provide. And the other thing that we provide is we have companies that have deployed us in over hundreds of thousands of servers. So we're actually very scalable, and we're very good at what we do, and we're very good at helping customers by shepherding through the process.
Interesting stuff. A little bit about the culture of Illumio, the company as a whole, and your culture.
Yeah, so the one thing I can honestly say about me and the rest of my teams is that, we really have each other's backs, right? And at the end of the day, when a customer calls us with a problem, we move heaven and earth to try to help them. The other thing too is that it doesn't matter what your job title is, it doesn't matter what you do. I've had issues where I had to call somebody in engineering, and I get people on Zoom sessions like this, and we help the customer out very, very quickly. And the one thing we always wanted is that to make sure our customers realize that we're there to help them quickly. We're there to help them, get to a good resolution as quickly as possible. So that's honestly the best I can say about the company, is that the team really rallies around the customer.
Excellent. Love it. Love the customer, right? Hey, Mike, best time ever to be in the tech industry and be a tech professional?
Yeah, it's exciting times. And what's really nice is that, it's nice to be doing something new. It's nice to be doing something transformational. The last time we saw this sort of transformation is when there was one point in our time where we could never imagine more than one operating system running on one server. Now we can't imagine when we only have one operating system running on one server, and we're seeing that kind of transformation now with segmentation. And it's really fun for me to be part of something that's transformational, something that can really change things for a customer.
Excellent. Mike, thanks for coming on the program. And Illumio is a great partner and sponsor of ours. Really appreciate your support. How can people get in touch with you, Illumio, and learn more?
Well, you can go to illumio.com, or if you want to reach out to me specifically, we have a free trial. You can also obviously take a look at our software. My email is michael@illumio.com. Feel free to reach out to me directly, and I can help you any way possible.
Excellent, Mike. Thanks so much. Really appreciate your time and a great story. Really educational. Thanks for coming on the program today. Next up, Gary Sorrentino. Gary's the lead customer advocate for Zoom. I think everyone now in the world knows Zoom. Zoom's really helped us stay connected during this crisis. Gary, welcome to the program.
Thanks a lot. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Hey, listen, what's unique about the culture at Zoom, the culture that Eric sets, that you bought into and you all the Zoom folks love, and how engaged you all are? What's unique inside of the culture?
Well, I'll tell you. So from the first day that I started with Zoom, and even before I started with Zoom, Harry sent me a Zoom ID, and he said, try this out. And it just worked. It was great to have a product that you just opened up, no instructions. It worked. It provided collaboration, continuity. It was actually really good. As I got to learn the company more and more, they really care about people. It was, in my opinion, it was amazing how when this whole pandemic happened, how we were able to just extend Zoom to different clientele, like the China clientele, like the schools. It was all about helping people. And so I've come up through the finance groups. And so working in finance, a lot of times you always want to be client first, but to see a company just say, let's just get them using this. Let's get the kids back to learning, right? That's the primary goal. So the culture at Zoom is about helping people, about helping each other. We're very collaborative. We work together. They have built that environment where people can thrive. They've built that environment where we all want to do well there. We're on Zoom calls like everybody else, from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. But to work in a company that people support each other and they support each other to help the clients is a new way of looking at things for me.
Hey, Gary, you come from an amazing background. JP Morgan Chase, I believe, for 14 years. The last 5, you led Jamie's kind of SWAT team, reaching out relative to security and helping secure high net worth clients. So you really take security and client customer care seriously.
I worked and invented what they call the Protect the Client program there. And that was all about looking at security from the outside in, from the client view in, and to help the clients be secure. The bank is always secure, right? But You have to get those weakest links, which happen to be the clients, and how do we make them more secure? Moving the problem as far away as possible from them and their financial institutions. So yeah, that was the last couple of years with JP Morgan. I had the privilege of doing that around the globe with ultra high net worth individuals.
So leading the whole security initiative in terms of the CISO, group, you have a great position or point of view at Zoom. When you think about the workforce has gone through tremendous transformation over the past 10 weeks, what have you learned? What are the lessons learned? What do you want to share with our audience here today?
I will tell you that, we talked about the new digital workplace, and I presented one of your events, things like in 2027, 50% of the people might be working from home. Yeah, we got to throw that statistic out, right? At the end of the day today, we went through a time where we couldn't think. We changed everybody's status quo, right? Without a plan. And so things like video, like Zoom, really help people get there. But this transformation we went through, unplanned, everybody adapted well. And I think adaptability is really what's important for companies now. And I think now we're at this plateau. We're kind of we hear the stories about, hey, daddy's on the left side of the tape, he's working, and on the right side of the tape on the floor, he's not working. And so the kids are learning to e-learn. The husbands and wives are learning to work at home. We're now living at work, and we're now settled. But coming up very shortly, as we reopen up the United States, we're going to move people through another transformation. And people don't handle change very well. And so I think companies really need to communicate a lot better. But communication, you talk to most leaders today, and communication is, well, I did 5 webinars. No, that's not communicating. Listening is a part of communicating. And I think that Zoom has allowed people to talk from their homes, a place where they're safe. It's not that work environment where we heard a couple of times before today, you're afraid to say your opinion. And I think the other thing is leaders have gotten, I know we're social distance, but I will tell you, I know everybody's kids. I know what their living rooms look like. I know what their pets look like, because we are now enter their homes through product like Zoom and things like that. But at the end of the day, we've become closer. And now I think some of the strict boundaries have come down, and the better leaders are now listening. And yes, mass communication is important, but I think you got to listen to people and figure out what they need, because that's how we're going to move forward.
It's a whole different dimension, right? Post-COVID, right? So what will the workforce look like, both short-term and longer term?
Short-term, I think it's going to be an experiment. I think we are going to reopen up our world, and we're going to open it up in what I'm calling the experimental stage. The next norm, I can never think being the final norm. I think the next norm, we're going to experiment. And the good news is we learned a lot to get where we are. You know what we learned? How to adapt, how to think quickly, right? How to make adjustments on the fly, where things would be like, well, let's put 6 people to study this for a week. Not time for that anymore. We learned to move forward. The next one is going to be an experiment. Companies are experimenting with, elevators and counterclockwise floors moving the same way, and buying those cubicle walls. I think everybody's experimenting, but I think the next norm will never be the final norm. The final norm will never be what it was, and we're going to be in a hybrid. But I think hopefully as we enter that hybrid stage, we teach people how to work differently. Think about it. Right now today, if you get a great idea, you have to get on a collaborative tool and share it with your team. When half the team is working at that workplace and half the team is home, when the half at work think about something, it's not like Gary's on a sick day, right? He's not coming to work, right? We might be on A and B rotation. How do we make sure everybody maintains that collaborative? And how do we rethink our roles? So I think we're going to go into an experimental stage, and I hope that we get through that quickly, because people need some semblance of normality, whatever that new normality is.
Yeah, culture matters. We know that, right, from the late Peter Drucker. And I can't think of one tool, one application, one platform in the world that's changed the shape of American business the way Zoom has in the past 12 months, right? How do you maintain a culture now in this experimental transition and transformation?
I think the one thing people have to learn is that through these new tools, there's different ways to work, and the culture is going to change for the positive. I think senior leaders, I think Snehal called them dictators, right? They're learning a different way to work, right? Now they're learning about that they're employees have core values. They have family values. We're part of their family now, right? They're going to bring those values to work, and those values will be there whether the culture of the corporation is that or not. Culture's not that. You don't send out a mail and say the culture of our company is X. You don't write it on the wall. Like you go to some of those quasi high performance centers and you see all these enlightening statements on the wall, right? That's not culture. Culture really is what your employees bring to work and how you take that and incorporate it into the fabric of the firm. And I think that it is time to listen to the employees, because I think what will happen is, because today we can find talent anywhere that we want. We figured out we can be productive anywhere we want. And that one key role doesn't have to be a person who can commute to work anymore. It can be anywhere in the world. And so what happens is those better talented people who are looking for a culture, a company that shares their culture, can go work for another company.
Right. You know, Gary, we're predicting that this time will be a time of extreme innovation. Thankful to platforms like Zoom that have really redefined the workplace, the work from home place.
Let's just hope during this time where the plane is kind of settled on the ground that we actually do take advantage of thinking in a very collaborative and innovative way, that we are now mustering the forces together and making part of their day not about them. Well, about them, I should say, not about the company. Zoom, we talked about the culture of Zoom. Zoom has a lot of events during the workday, yoga, open mic, and things like that, because they want people to know that during the workday, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to do something just for you, right? And I think companies need to start thinking about, we are living at work, right? And so how do we bring some of that, what we've gotten used to in this stage forward? And it's through innovation and collaboration for sure.
Great thing, great stuff, really exciting. Skills, Gary, that you think, or some good tips, skills and tips.
You know, I'll tell you this, is you need to figure out how to embrace some of the new technologies. We've had to learn how to use technology in a collaborative way, right? We've had to learn how to use whiteboarding. We've had to learn how to use video. The problem is most of our leaders, when you see them in person, you sense anger, fear, success, empathy, right? Sometime the glass in between you have to learn how to speak on those different mediums now. And you have to learn that it's not like being in front of people. People can look away and you don't see it. You can't gain energy from the audience. You can't adapt based on body language, right? Because a lot of the people like here, this is a webinar. I don't see how many people there are out there. Sure. And so at the end of the day, you have to learn that these new mediums are going to be with us for a very, very long time. And you have to learn that there's a way to speak on camera, and there's a way to give compassion and empathy on camera. And the employees have to learn that these new collaborative tools is not about yelling over the cubicle, hey, I don't know how to print, right? And so I hope we embrace this new version of collaboration going forward. And I hope that the senior leaders today, I spend a lot of time working with CEOs and senior leaders on how to communicate over these mediums, how to make it stand out. It's not just another video call. It was an experience. And I think that we have to look at these new tools and we have to figure out how to make them work better than they even are working today.
Brilliant stuff, Gary. Really appreciate your coming on the program. Final parting comment, best time ever to be a tech leader, to be in technology?
You know, I think it's the best time. I think in my 40 years, this is probably the most exciting time, because we're always stuck with something that came from the past, right? We've never had the ability or the time to just stop the world so I can think for 5 minutes. And for a brief period, globally, we stopped, right? And I hope that people have picked that up and figured out, hey, this is what I wanted all along. I just wanted that one time where I could pick it up and I can make it better, not based on the past. This is a very, very good opportunity now. This is an opportunity to change the way we work, to change the way we collaborate, to change the culture of the whole workforce in the United States. And so I hope everybody takes advantage of it as we are at Zoom.
Great, Gary. Thanks for coming on the program. Looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
How can we get, one last question. How can we get in touch with you?
You know, it's Gary.Sorrentino@zoom.us. Please drop me a note.
Awesome. Great.
Take care.
Talk to you soon. Bye. Okay, next up, folks, on the program, Reimagining the Business and the Future of Work. Our panelists, please come out on the program. We'll start with Emilia Bostater, Global IT Operations and Architecture for IDEXX Lab. Emilia, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here and happy to present IDEXX in this summit.
You know, IDEXX is an amazing company. I've known your boss, Ken Grady, for years. A little bit about IDEXX, what's unique about what you're doing there, and the unique architecture that you've crafted over the years, and your role.
Sure. So IDEXX is a global leader in companion animal veterinary diagnostics and software solutions. And we also provide diagnostic for livestock, poultry, and dairy, as well as do water quality testing. So if anyone here on the call has a pet, so imagine you bring your pet to a veterinarian, the veterinarian is their customer. When they check you in, we provide the software that they use to manage their practice, also the in-house diagnostic that the blood test and so forth. IDEXX provides those, and in some veterinarians, they send the samples to one of our reference laboratories, and we provide them the results. So it's a pretty exciting business to be on. People love their pets. They are essential service even during this critical time, and so is IDEXX. So it's important that we do not miss a beat during this pandemic to be able to serve our veterinarian customers. So we are about 9,000 employees globally in about 100 and so sites. We sell products in 175 service countries, and we are headquartered in Maine.
It's amazing. You never would have figured in Maine, right? And by the way, if you look back, I think over the past 5 years, pretty safe bet, one of the top performers in the S&P 500 in terms of stock appreciation.
That's correct, and due to our culture, due to our strive, due to our strong principles, and due to our principles for innovation and continuously enhance the health of pets and livestock and even people. So my role, I am the head of global IT operations, which support all of our infrastructure services, as well as our enterprise application support and all of our end user services. So as you can imagine, if you're anywhere near that type of role, it's been a pretty busy and hectic few months to support the companies and the backbone infrastructure to be able to operate and be resilient and make sure that the company is not missing a beat.
You know, it's fascinating. Over the years, the past 3 to 5 years, you really lived the digital acceleration and pivot as you went from a traditional model to really a direct model. A little bit about that and technology playing a key role in being able to go direct to veterinarians.
Sure. So IDEXX is always innovating and looking different ways of doing business. And a few years back, we did do a leap and went direct and with great results and investing in technology and our sales and commercial capabilities to be able to serve our customers directly. And that continues. If we look at in April, our incredible sales force did most of the 75% of our client visits virtually and really appreciated by our customers. In addition, we have, we've invested, this is investments over multiple years. So you don't start now, right? You need to be ready now. We have remote technical support, customer support, our inside sales. We do remote installation, the in-house equipment that we have in the veterinarian clinics are internet enabled, so we can monitor, troubleshoot, and provide support remotely. And there are a few things that we've added. If we think about the pet owner, and the veterinarian, the interaction in today's world is different. So you're dropping off your dog in a curbside, you're being checked in with an iPad, and IDEXX supports that technology for the veterinarians to be able to do the appropriate social distancing and, you know, billing and so forth. So we've added a few of those things in our spectrum, as well as we have a really broad spectrum of telehealth capabilities that integrate with the practice management software in the veterinarian practices. So we'll be able to provide even that type of support. So I think well positioned to ensure that those critical services will continue.
Excellent. Thanks, Emilia. Please stay with us on the program. We'll loop back to you here in a minute. Next up, Max Chan, CIO at Avnet. Max has an amazing background, global executive, one of HMG's top tech leader, recognized as a CIO of the Year award recipient. Max, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks, Hunter, for having me. Really appreciate being
a little bit about Avnet and the global scale that you've your experience you have and how your major transformation of the last few years has gone.
You know, for those of you who are not familiar with Avnet, we are one of the largest technology distributor focusing on electronic components. Not a household name for sure. However, people would recognize that the little components that you have either in your chargers or in the cables, etc. Those are the things that we do. What we have done in the last few years, really focusing on transforming away from purely being a box shipper to provide solutions in order to be able to expand through the ecosystem that we have, right? Working with the community of engineers all the way to design, manufacturing, supply chain, and go to market. That transformations really has helped Avnet expand our capabilities because we know the upstream and the downstream players in the value chain and really provide that platform to bring supplier and customers together in order to deliver capabilities and technology to the industry. Now that position us so well in this situations where we saw ourselves pivoting together with our customer and supplier to focus on some of the medical needs that we see increasing, right? And being able to quickly bring that to the market and help the globe through this challenging situations.
How's the pandemic shaped and your transformation, reshaped it?
You know what? It actually becomes a silver lining for us. It helps to accelerate the transformations. It actually helps us to Snehal and Gary's point earlier, jumping into things and solving problem quickly. The collaborations is so much stronger with our various partners, more so than what it used to be. Right, we brought down the barrier that we used to think we have to get people together in a room in a particular space to come up with the solutions. Now we can do it by coming on platform like Zoom to be able to do that more collaboratively and more quickly.
It's amazing, right? The amount of innovation as the culture shifts, the organization shifts, using platforms like Zoom, how you can impact shift so quickly.
You know, and it's a dream for technology leader like myself, right? Historically, Avnet, we have seen ourselves very much focusing on the different regions. We do very well in the regions, but we continue to have roadblocks when we try to move capabilities and best practice from one region to another region. Today, it's all seamless because everyone works remotely, regardless of where you are in China or in Germany or in the States. You'll be able to jump onto a platform, albeit time zone is a challenge. And Gary, if you can solve this time zone problem, I think that would be great. But then again, people are comfortable with that, right? People know that they are saving time in commute, but they are willing to be more flexible with the time to be able to work as a global company. And that has shaped Avnet in a big way in the last 2 months as compared to what we have been trying to drive in the last many years.
Thanks, Max. Stay with us. We'll circle back to you here in a minute. Next up, Quintin McGrath, Senior Managing Director, Technology Management Enablement for Deloitte. Quintin's got an amazing role at Deloitte. Quintin, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks, Hunter.
So let's talk about multi-generational leadership, right? Yeah. How many generations do we have? What really matters in this digital world? What really matters in the Zoom world as it relates to getting people to think differently, to innovate, and to help drive that cultural shift that we've all been touching on? And let's just call it out. This is right in your wheelhouse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very interesting, this whole focus, and a lot of our focus historically has been on the generations and saying there's a difference in the generations, and for sure the way that the generations have been experiencing the last 2 months, 2.5 months has been fairly different, as well as how introverts and extroverts have experienced the past while. And we've seen within the thinking in the organization that there's different ways that we have to interact and integrate. And so the focus on how do we make sure that we are meeting the needs and meeting the various employees of the different generations in different ways. And so many of the Zoom calls we have, and yes, we also use Zoom in the organization, is how do we connect people together? And so often with the younger generation, the millennial generations, we have a number of water cooler type discussions where we're interacting and very much focused on how to reach them. Now, recognizing, of course, that purpose is very, very important in terms of the millennial generation, but of course now expanding to the rest of the organization. And so how do we then link up not only just meeting them as individuals and considering their well-being, but how do we then take it further and help them to be able to impact the community around them and give them purpose, even in a lockdown time? And so we've seen a lot of encouragement from our leaders, right from the global CEO down, in terms of how do we focus on impacting our people, but the community and our clients as we serve them. So the various generations, very, very different needs, but then at the same time recognizing different people and individuals have a very different focus on what they need right now and how do we respond to that. And that's all driven by things like values and attitudes in terms of how we actually think about delivering our service and delivering to our clients.
When you thank you, Quinn. When you think of the social enterprises, we get back to work. What's important?
Yeah, the social enterprise, from my perspective, is really key. And think about a social enterprise as one that focuses on clearly the profits of the organization. We're business people. We clearly have to make profits and make sure our stakeholders are get their appropriate dues. But then we recognize as well as an enterprise, we have an impact on the community around us, an impact on the world around us. And it's been really interesting watching the focus as we drive back into the new normal. Just how people have sat back during the lockdown and said, well, look at the positive impact potentially that's happened in the environment. Less planes have been flying, we're driving less cars around. How's that had a positive impact in the world? And so Puneet Renjan, our global CEO in the last year's Global Impact Report, talked about the people, about profits and planet, and really focusing on, as we come back into this new normal, let's bring along with it the bigger picture of the social enterprise. So we're not just here to focus on profits, we do need to focus on that. But what about the community? What about the planet? What about what we're doing more broadly? And as we bring that context into what we've learned over the last 2.5 months, we can certainly add that to the community around us and the impact on the world around us.
Brilliant insights. Quintin, please stay with us. Next up, Craig Peasley, Head of Product Marketing from Adobe. Craig, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate Adobe's support over the years. Yeah, I think we've been working together for 3 years, very friendly and close with Cynthia Stoddard, your global CIO.
Absolutely.
So Craig, what are the digital innovation areas of focus that you're seeing companies really pivot and moving on during this crisis?
Well, I mean, we've seen, it's really remarkable what we've seen from companies. I mean, just with the COVID pandemic, you know, how companies are able to respond to, you know, so many of these companies had processes in place that were just in person. They weren't really, they looked at their digital transformation projects, you know, as kind of a multi-year initiative. What we've seen in a matter of weeks and months is that companies are kind of moving away from those multi-year plans to implementing things in days and weeks. And we've seen across industries, governments, for example, and banks and insurance companies, and you name it, they're reacting in hours. I mean, what was a nice to have prior is now becoming an imperative. When you look at things like the business processes, how the business gets done, so many of these companies just simply weren't prepared for this transition to a kind of fully digital remote work environment. And so we've been working closely with so many of these companies, the CIOs, as well as the chief experience officers, to help them think about how to quickly approach and transform and to digital really, really quickly. You know, I think it's been a learning process for them. For Adobe, this is something that we've been doing for many, many years. In fact, I was talking with some CIOs last week, and we were talking paperless. Adobe was talking paperless Office 25 years ago. I mean, it's one of the reasons PDF became a standard format. So we've kind of been leading that effort for many, many years. And I think now with the environment we're in, companies realize that this is just, it's an imperative and they've got to make that transition in investments. But we know it's challenging, right? Because we've read and seen a lot of the research that says the companies are pulling back on their spend to offset maybe loss in revenues. But what we're saying is that the companies are continuing to accelerate their digitization primarily through IT, but what they're doing is they're narrowing the focus. So instead of having these broad projects across multiple functions, they're segueing them into those that are more critical to their core business processes. And they're setting very, based on an agile process, they're focused very much on what can we do here quickly to improve experiences, first for their employees, to make sure that they're productive and they're able to continue to collaborate day to day, similar to what a lot of the other guests had shared. But more importantly, going forward will be the customers, is how do they drive that engagement and deliver experiences that their customers expect.
Craig, we've been following this lead, reimagine, reinvent the customer journey, and you all have been living it for the 25 years. I've tracked you for 15 with Jerry Martin Flickinger when I remember we used to get something in a box, and now you guys are a complete digital company. I think the stock's up probably over close to 1,000% over that time. You guys know scale, right?
Yeah, we do. And, Adobe's gone through that journey over the last 8 to 10 years. And so, you mentioned Cynthia Stoddard. What better advocate to have than somebody who's actually taken a multi-billion-dollar company through that process? We're taking what we've learned there, and we're bringing that to customers and others in the industry that are looking for that kind of partnership and that kind of advisory to help them make those same transitions. It's all about scale. So we are completely digital. And I would say, one of the things that, in talking with a lot of our customers, is many of their organizations are still utilizing, software on-premise. They're not fully engaged on cloud services. And I think, if ever there was a time for companies to reconsider and make that transition to fully cloud so they can scale, whether they're doing business globally or whether now supporting an entirely digital workforce to be able to, provide those services, it's really, really important.
Hey, never let a good crisis go to waste, or a bad crisis. Right. How can people get in touch with you and your team to learn more about the customer map and the customer journey?
Yeah, they can reach out to me, cpeasley@adobe.com, or also go to our website and look at both our Adobe Document Cloud as well as our digital experience services.
Awesome. I'd love to follow up with you later. Stay with us, Craig, okay? Great to have you on the program. Next up, Brian Shield, VP of IT of the Boston Red Sox. Brian's been a great fan and friend of HMG for a long time, no pun intended. Brian, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks, Hunter. Great to be here.
Good to see you. Boy, wow, things have changed in your world dramatically, and I got to tell you, I am losing it because I want baseball back. When are we going to see baseball this year?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's funny to think about sports. Like, everyone tunes in to watch Tom Brady rip his pants or something golfing over the weekend. It's like I think we're all sort of have pent-up frustration as it pertains to sports. So, that's a great question. I think everyone probably reads, about what's going on right now with Major League Baseball, and kind of working with the Players Union, trying to find a model that works for both them as well as, for organizations and things. So, I think everyone's optimistic that we'll kind of get this, squared away and, be back to at least the business of baseball. Obviously, I think the fans will be sort of a secondary, at least within the ballpark. Obviously you're going to kind of lag a little bit. So it creates challenges, obviously, for all sports organizations, in terms of how you kind of adjust to this kind of new normal, if you will.
It'll be interesting in terms of production, how it's treated in terms of more attention to production as it relates to home viewing, right? So what's changed in your world? What's changed in your world over the past 10 weeks?
Yeah, I think like everyone, I think we've gone through these phases. I remember Gartner had this slide, which I've kind of somewhat memorized, about, like, you think about this first sort of reaction phase, sort of, we all kind of respond to kind of our employees working from home. And I think, any IT organization, I think, hopefully came away from that first initial phase as heroes, right? They got this, or their organizations in a place where they could all work digitally. A lot of these things we've been testing and advocating for the last X number of years have actually worked, and things like that. So my hope is that, and then as you kind of transition from that to a bit of a recovery phase to ultimately kind of like, a rebuild model, I think it's critically important that that CIOs and IT leaders understand sort of this transition and sort of carry this renewed energy and enthusiasm and hopefully some success, to basically capitalize on that within their organization to kind of, affect culture, to drive the top line, to kind of make a difference, to revisit their technology imperatives and things like that, so that they can sort of, both support the business and hopefully drive, new forms of business.
Are you working on new ways to engage fans more broadly with the business as it relates to a digital platform maybe for this season?
Yeah, so, I mean, for those who may not know, I mean, the Boston Red Sox ownership group, Fenway Sports Group, owns, the Red Sox and Liverpool football and Roush Fenway Racing, and, a majority ownership stake in NESN, or New England Cable Sports Network, a local regional sports net in New England, and some other, ancillary businesses as well. And so obviously there's a big focus on sports in general, but I think there's been a transition, if you will, over the last few years to really, in all sports, I think, to really kind of start working with a fan on a 365 day year. It used to be, for many sports, it was kind of like you're actively engaged during the season, and then teams would go into some form of off season, and then you'd sort of reemerge when they're either in spring training or preseason type of thing. And I think you're now starting to see, like everything with social media and other sort of aspects, that there's touch points along the way. And so, like many of those organizations, we're starting to leverage those touch points. Obviously, our partners on the television side are looking at new ways of touching fans. We're looking at ways, and having a lot of conversations with a lot of other sports franchises about, like, what should that stadium look like when you don't have fans? Do you leverage, some elements of augmented reality? How do you most effectively sort of create sort of a compelling opportunity? But one of the big challenges for those that, tune in and listen to these different challenges about sports and an environment where you don't have fans is the home field advantage, right? Like, what's a home field advantage without fans necessarily? So there's a lot of, underlying changes taking place or in discussion. And so I think the common theme here is innovation. And I think, like many of your guests this morning, I think it's also about learnings. And I think there's never been a better time ever to have relationships with your peers and to have relationships with various organizations like this one, where you can learn from one another. I mean, one of your prior guests said it well, I thought, which is, there is kind of this like silver lining here. We're all sort of, I think, behind sort of, finding solutions to the COVID-19 challenges. I think we're all sort of realizing too that these boundaries that sort of used to exist between organizations really are very impractical and an impediment really to our own sort of, evolution and innovation. And my hope is that we kind of learn from all this. And if you're an insular kind of technology organization where, if it's kind of the ain't invented here type of thing, I think in this new world, you're really kind of not just buying the 8 ball, you're really in, serious danger of being sort of, moved out in some respects, because I think the IE and CIO, if never before, should be about innovation.
Well stated. Really brilliant. Great segment there. Thank you, Brian. Stay with us. Maybe we'll bring all the panelists back to an open mic. Is this the best time ever? Start with you, Brian, to be in tech, and why?
Yeah, like a lot of your the people who come on before, I absolutely, and I know that we probably have been saying that for 10 years, but there really is a unique opportunity here. And that's around sort of, I think, there is this unique moment where it's not just about sort of, we've all talked about sort of, driving revenue, but like most CIOs kind of looked at that and sort of had with a passing, eye of like, how am I going to really do that? I think more than ever, if you're not driving revenue, then you have a major challenge. But driving revenue, driving employee productivity, reducing expenses, thinking about sort of your strategy, revisiting your strategy, like where all of our budgets are going to be under renewed stress. And so therefore, what you put forth is going to be, and never more impactful. And there's an opportunity to kind of, inform employees and make them more aware and touch your customers. I should have led with that. Like there's never been a better opportunity to do those things. And I think the CIO is the best positioned leader in an organization, I think, to kind of enact those changes.
Brian, thank you so much for sharing your thought leadership today and your ongoing commitment and support of the HMG platform. It's brilliant. Emilia, same idea, best time ever, right? To be in our industry and to be a tech leader. You're having fun at IDEXX. I know that.
Yeah, no, it is actually a great time. And And I think one of the things has been nice to see that the year's worth of investment and trust from the company to invest in collaboration tools, invest in cloud-based product, to invest in security, network, all of those things. So now the fruits are paying off, and the importance of that background work is acknowledged. That said, I think what's exciting here is this is now time to show that technology doesn't exist just for technology's sake. It exists to solve business problems and accelerate the company objectives that ultimately result in customer benefits. And I think IT in any company now has a seat at the table. As any leader, I think this is an opportunity to reinforce culture and the company purpose, as well as global inclusion.
Excellent. Really well said. Thank you, Emilia. Quintin, you want to jump in on being a tech leader in this environment?
Absolutely. And, you know, at this time, it's really interesting. If you take a look at what's happening in technology over the last decade, it's been absolutely crazy. And we've got to the point now where every business is a technology business. And we've just released in Deloitte, we've done a human capital trends report, and it's interesting to see the focus now is the fusion of human and technology, and how do we have organizations that are technology organizations but are human, they're distinctly human. And I think that to me is the richness of the time that we have now as IT leaders, CIOs, is we're in a position where the organization has become technology driven. All businesses are technology businesses. And so the ability for us as custodians of technology and of everything it brings along with it to be part of that and keep the organization distinctly human, in other words, adding all the well-being and all the focus around being human and doing things in an ethical and an appropriate way. So how should we do stuff? So the combination of the fantastic acceleration we've had in technology, the fact that technology is way embedded in the organization now, and now we as IT leaders can bring the richness of that along with the human element of well-being, of caring for our people and impact on society around us as well. So an amazing place for us, I believe, as technology leaders, and something we need to take up the mantle of being those custodians and actually making a difference and bringing in the appropriate technologies in the appropriate way to our organizations and society.
Quintin, brilliant. Thank you for coming on the program today. Craig, over to you. Best time ever to be a technology professional?
Easily best time ever. IT has never been more strategic to a business success than, I mean, it's never been more strategic. So I think it's an opportunity for IT to really lead and show what it's capable of delivering, you know, both to employees where we know it's all about workforce, it's all about productivity in a remote environment. So that if you want to retain your best people, you need to make sure that they feel productive and that they feel engaged with the company. And then two is with customers, right? So you can imagine how companies are going through this transition. You know, what about their customers? So ensuring that they're having experiences where we're bringing them along is of utmost importance to drive satisfaction and long-term loyalty. So IT is right in the center where it needs to be.
Excellent. Thanks, Craig. Brian, hey, final comment on the panel today?
Oh yeah, absolutely loved it. You know, I've learned, you know, so much from everyone here. And you know, there's a comment. You'll love this, Hunter. It's like I was on a Peloton this morning, and the instructor said, she said, you know, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. And I think there's this unique opportunity, you know, both for ourselves as well as our, you know, associates, to really use this as an opportunity to kind of, you know, address some of those opportunities to become a better leader, become a better person, if you will. And so, you know, I have a very kind of optimistic sort of hope that we'll be in a much better place as a result of all this in the future.
Brian, brilliant. Final thought. Thank you so much for being here today. A big thanks to Emilia, Max, Quintin, Brian again, Craig, and really appreciate all your engagement. Please stay with us if you can to the end of the summit, because we'll hopefully bring everyone back together for a final comment. Next up is Sean McCourt, founding and managing partner of Longford & Company. Sean's been a longtime friend and supporter in the Boston market, as well as search executives Hugo Froylein, Beverly Lieberman, and Mark Polanski. Sean?
Hi, how are you? Thanks, Hunter. Appreciate it.
Great.
So I'm Sean McCourt, founder of Longford & Company, New England-based executive search and consulting firm here. I'm going to let Hugo, Mark, Beverly do a quick little intro for themselves, and then we'll dive into some questions. Beverly, you want to start us off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Beverly Lieberman, president of Hallbrecht Lieberman Associates. We're a retained executive search firm. We're out of Westport, Connecticut, and we work across all industries all over the country doing CIO and direct report to CIO searches. And I also manage a robust executive coaching business. So I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. Hugo?
Yes, Hugo Fugline here with Diversified Search. I'm a managing director, co-lead our CIO practice and digital transformation practice, based here in New York. And I've been involved in CIO and technology search work for over 25 years.
Great. And Mark, finally.
Good morning, Sean and Hunter. Hope you're both well. So I, as it says, I'm Mark Polanski. I'm with Korn Ferry. Been a senior partner at Korn Ferry for 23 years, and about 40 years of talent acquisition experience overall, and entirely focused and dedicated to the C-suite within enterprise IT. That's chief information officers, chief technology officers, chief digital and data officers, and last but not least, chief information security officers.
Terrific. Terrific. Beverly, let's dive into a question with you. We always talk, or the new term now is this new normal. You know, and as you think about building culture and how this culture has to shift in this new normal, how do you see building culture? How do you see clients building culture for existing people as well as for new people that you're trying to attract into the organization?
Sure, that's a good question. I think going forward, we have to make some assumptions, although we are living in uncertain times about whether people will be coming back into physical buildings and how many will. And so I'm counting on the fact that we've been reasonably productive virtually and that companies will support a virtual workforce more than ever, you know, in the past. So how do you bring in new talent, let's just say even at the executive level, who has never, you know, met in person their peers, their boss, their support teams, their peers. So it's going to be a very different onboarding process. And this affects the culture, right? Because people that have been in an organization for a while, they know the norms, they know the principles, they kind of know the, you know, the water cooler talk is so important. What's said at, you know, at lunchtime in the lunchroom. We don't have that at the moment. So I think the advice I have for CIOs and CISOs who are leading teams is, you know, kind of get with your HR partner and your talent acquisition partner and think about how you're going to bring on new people. No doubt you need someone to be a mentor to new people, even at the executive level, to communicate how the organization exists, what its principles are, what its values are. It's going to be done through video more than not. So it's just a different era. And I think company culture could suffer if we don't proactively think through how to engage people in this virtual world. So you need help. You need to gather people to come up with programs and plans for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Hugo, I'm sure that you're talking to CIOs all the time about you know, how they're handling the COVID situation. What's a common answer that you're finding from executives, and what is the type of answer you're actually looking for from executives?
Well, there's two different things there. I don't think there's necessarily a common answer because I think it's very different. We're all on a different journey. And that's, you know, the first thing I do answer is, gee, how have you done? What's transpired? What have you learned? And we're really getting a lot of different responses. But what I'm looking for in all this is really the learning of this, really how you as a leader have been able to connect. You know, this is where being humble, being empathetic, really being inclusive, you know, all forms of diversity are really the top of the mountain, really, in terms of success, because we're not at the end state here. We're, you know, I think Gary said it best. We're gonna, you know, we're very all virtual right now, but there's gonna be this hybrid environment that we move into over the next, you know, 6 to 9 months, obviously. So, you know, we've heard, you know, CTOs say, boy, we've hit the ball, you know, we just really performed well. All the lights are green, right? We've been prepared, we've performed well. Now what's next? Because come September, you know, we're going to have X amount of teams working in, you know, remote and a certain percentage not. So I'm looking for those kind of answers, what they're thinking in their, you know, 90 to 100 day, how they're going to deal with this hybrid world that I think we're moving into. But it's been very different across the board. It's been in the industry.
Yeah, no doubt. Mark, what would you say a skill set is, or some sort of attribute that you are seeing your clients kind of hone in on now, you know, post-COVID or in COVID, compared to what you maybe something you weren't seeing prior to all this happening?
I think it's not a question of what we weren't seeing before, but what's being emphasized now. So the premium today is on communications, as we've all said. Ongoing, continuous communication, honest, open, and authentic. And so my interviews now spend a lot of time asking about and exploring communication during this period. And the other premium skill or competency is working through ambiguity. Those that are working well through ambiguity are succeeding, are keeping their teams together, are keeping their project portfolio going as best they can given financial constraints. And the focus on then people, projects, and technology. The technology is there. That's what makes this such an exciting time. There are so many tools, software, hardware, and communications and otherwise, that there is almost nothing we can't do with today's technology until we find out about tomorrow's technology, of course. But the technology is there. The projects are there, even if some have been slowed down or temporarily postponed. In fact, when the market comes back, it will come back with a vengeance, and there will be great opportunities that were postponed that are then available out there. So the last thing, technology projects, is the people. And I tell our CIOs, our hiring managers, this is a really, really wonderful time to sit down and measure and take stock of what you have, the talent you have, the talent you don't have, the talent you need, and figure out your people strategy as well as your technology and project strategy going forward.
Yeah, great. Beverly, this ties in a little bit to your initial comments around culture. When you think about culture, you know, and within a CIO or digital officer's organization, how do you see, you know, in this new normal, how do you see CIOs or executives building out and developing their succession plans when everything is virtual like this?
Sure. I think, you know, it's not really different in terms of the planning process.
I guess the plan doesn't change much, right? But
no, I don't think it changes much. I think one of the components of looking at succession is really examining yourself, if you're the CIO, and the leadership attributes that you have, and those of the people that you are thinking about in terms of succession. And, you know, this theme of this conference is, you know, the future of work. And I just want to comment that so many of our guests today spoke so articulately about the need for leadership and strong communication. And I must say that this is the time for self-reflection and for coming to terms with what you're really good at as a leader and where you could use personal development. And it's the best time to get some personal leadership training. You know, there are amazing online courses at Columbia, at Cornell. You know, we have some flexibility with our virtual lives now. We could take courses and not interrupt our work. So I think, I feel it's important that everybody, you know, do some self-evaluation and figure out where you are on the scale, because you're going to need these leadership skills, and your people could potentially benefit from some leadership training. So those are my thoughts at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think that is one of the toughest things that people are going to be or currently trying to figure out is how do I develop a person through these Zoom calls, you know, when we're so accustomed to doing it face to face in that kind of intimate setting. Mark, question for you. And I'll also throw this question to you, Hugo, after Mark answers. What would you say one of the biggest non-technology-based, non-technical contributions is that a CIO or an executive, IT executive can make right now?
Well, clearly to get involved in corporate strategy, this is a great opportunity. The world has come to realize, we knew it quite a while ago, but the corporate world really has broadly realized that technology is an important tool, as important as financial management, as important as sales and marketing strategy, that technology's contribution to business plans, business models, and strategic initiatives going forward at the enterprise level the technology piece is indispensable. And so I think my colleagues and I would all recommend finding the way to get involved in corporate strategy with a technology approach in hand.
Yeah, great. Hugo?
Yeah, I a little different slant here. I think, you know, maybe Mark, I think you said this earlier. I think the technology, and we know it's going to continually change and get better, but I think it's not a technology question or issue. I think it's more about how we can help our boards and our executive leadership teams really augment these technologies into what's to come, right? So we see this everywhere. It's not just about artificial intelligence, about machine learning, about, you know, doing things virtually. You still have to understand a business model, how we can kind of have this hybrid reality. You know, people still need to do things. They're just going to need to do things differently. They're going to need to re-skilled. There's going to be new processes. And I think it's very important for the IT leadership, CIO, CTO, et cetera, to really, when they're talking in front of the board, when they're talking in front of their CEOs, to really, you know, understand the business model and how we're going to use people and technology differently over the next, you know, 6 months to a year, because we all have to. We've seen how restaurants have had to adapt, right? We can just go down. We see healthcare. Telehealth is a real thing now, but it's just at its infancy stage. So how is that going to work? You know, we went from kind of zero to some of the CTOs that I'm talking to. It's like 1,200, you know, hits a day. You know. And that's a lot, but it's not the end state. So what, you know, I think you have to be intimately involved how this business model is going to change and how we're going to use people and technology to make that happen, improve service and revenue.
Hey, Sean, we have a poll here, and then we get the poll, and then we got to wrap up. Nikki, you want to jump in and do the poll real quick? There we go. Where will work be conducted as of Q4 in 2020? Highly distributed, very distributed, moderately distributed. By Q4, more than half the employees will be working in dedicated offices again. Folks, if you could populate the poll, I want to thank Beverly, Sean, great job, Mark, and Hugo. Really, really appreciate it. We're going to segue over to our next panel. And welcome to the program, Rocco Grillo, Susan Whittemore, Jonathan Nguyen-Duy, Jay Gonzalez, and Gerald Beuchelt. Welcome. And Rocco, why don't you take it away? Hopefully everyone knows Rocco. He's an amazing individual.
Hunter, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can't see you that well, but jump in, go.
Give me just 1 second. I want to update that. Apologies there. We're good. Okay.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. Rocco Grillo. Spoken at a number of HMG's events and appreciate being able to moderate this one today. We've got a number of esteemed panelists here today that represent cybersecurity in an evolving network, an evolving enterprise. And given what we're going on through COVID and just the whole, we've said a lot throughout the presentation and just in the industry, work from home, work from anywhere. There's been a lot on the cyber side as far as embracing what are the things that we should do to make sure we're secure. But at the same time, a lot of the things we're seeing with clients, companies, just in general, the industry at large, the companies that are able to accelerate are really embracing this and looking at this, not so much as a positive, but the next level, the next innovation as we evolve as businesses, as enterprises, industries. What we'd like to do is just go around to our panelists, let them introduce themselves, give a little bit about their background, and then we have some questions lined up for them. Jonathan, would you like to kick us off? I think Jonathan is mute.
Hi, many thanks for allowing me to have this opportunity to meet with you all. My name is Jonathan Nguyen. I'm a vice president and a field CISO at Fortinet. Been involved in cybersecurity for 25 odd years now. Prior to my time at Fortinet, I was at Verizon, where I was working in the MSSP practice and the data breach investigations report. I'm looking forward to sharing thoughts. I think the biggest challenge we've got today is that we've got two major tectonic shifts happening simultaneously. Previously we've had that yin and yang between distributed and centralized computing. And now we have both forces occurring simultaneously, evidenced by the movement to cloud and adoption of cloud, and the simultaneous movement to the edge in terms of remote working and all things smart platform and connected platforms. So I think it's an unprecedented stage for technology and security specifically.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. Susan?
Hi, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be on. I'm Susan Whittemore. I'm the founder and CEO of Tiffet Cyber. We're a company that helps smaller businesses improve or build their cybersecurity programs. And I've got about 20 some odd, like Jonathan, maybe 25 years of working in this business, mostly in large financial or enterprise settings. Spent some time with a retailer who had just announced a breach some number of years ago. So I've been from working in this industry, everything from mainframe technologies right up until blockchain and all of this COVID work. So never a dull moment. But my company is really focused on the underserved market right now and having a lot of activity and fun in that realm.
I'm sure. Thank you, Susan. Jerry, over to you.
Thank you so much, Gerald Beuchelt. I'm a CISO and VP for LogMeIn. We do products such as LastPass, Rescue, GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, those kind of remote working products. And we've been actually very much interested in seeing how other companies have been adopting to the current lockdown situation. For us, it was actually fairly simple to move forward, just because we had a remote workforce about 40% prior to this, and moving from 40 to 100 did come with its challenges, but it was actually relatively smooth. But helping a lot of the smaller companies on the way here, our customers, was important to us. Prior to LogMeIn, I was a CISO at Demandware, now part of Salesforce. So we did web retail, essentially running the retail stores, and I had a bunch of other things before, including some government work, and way back in the days at Sun Microsystems.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jerry. And I know Jay Gonzalez was going to join us. I believe that he had a matter that had come up. He's not going to be able to join us. But with that, we're going to jump in, and, you know, for myself personally, or just even our firm, we're about 5,000 plus people across 4 continents. We're in week 10 remote, and for me, I mean, even just not just with the HMG sessions, I've been able to participate across the country, but just, you know, the whole travel and, you know, going from, you know, office settings or at client settings to remote, everyone is going through this. So it's not so much this is new, in a lot of instances, the new normal. And I know in preparing for this, many of our panelists have had examples or experiences not only at their companies or as well as with partners and clients that they're working with. Jonathan, I'm going to throw it over to you. And, you know, this widely used term, the new normal, what is that going to mean for us as we continue to evolve? Because I think even if you go back a couple months ago, nobody would have anticipated. Here we are 3 months in plus, for, you know, not to be US centric, but at the same time, the new, we're in the middle of it, and it's going to continue to evolve. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
So I think the quote new normal is basically an acceleration of those macro trends in digital transformation that we've seen over the last 3 years. I think it's going to be much more hybrid. It's going to be much more distributed. And I think the operational model is going to be termed contactless commerce and communications. And so what you're going to see are huge spikes in data flows. And at the same time, as more and more work is being done remotely, the business objectives, the security objectives, the compliance objectives, the privacy objectives don't go away. In fact, the main challenge moving forward is how will you replicate those previous sort of face-to-face transactions, things like doctor's visits, professional services, things that have high confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But now you're going to be trying to do things like that remotely, where you'll have millions of connections and requests for network access simultaneously, all of which, 90% of which probably will involve encrypted traffic. And then how will you ensure the application of things like zero trust principles across millions and hundreds of millions of sessions simultaneously, right? I think the main challenge is going to be how do we scale the architecture to deliver all those outcomes at speed and scale, because no matter what happens, our customers, our employees, our stakeholders all expect really heightened user experiences. And every CISO, every CIO I've spoken with over the last 10 weeks has said, look, it's still the same requirements. We have to deliver on our business objectives, and we have to deliver an enhanced customer and user experience. The challenge is now, because for the first time, the vast majority of our staffs are working outside the quote unquote perimeter, is that zero trust is no longer just a buzz term, but now a practical reality that they're all trying to implement. So I think that's going to be the new normal, much more highly distributed, much more hybrid. And the modern enterprise architecture is going to look very distributed. It's going to look like elements that are SOHO, elements that are retail, elements that are branch offices, elements that are traditional enterprise networks, and then elements that are cloud and enterprise. And that's going to be raise a level of complexity. And so faster, broader, and far more complex.
Without question. Thanks for that, Jonathan. And I know, Jerry, you know, when we were prepping and talking about some of the areas that have evolved, we looked at a lot of things, how companies had jumped out and trying to make our employees aware, you know, almost, you know, commendable jobs, you know, by and large for companies. Even if you heard from some of our CIOs on the panel earlier, where in a blink of an eye, we've gone from working in office arenas to our homes overnight. You know, awareness has been enforced to the 10th degree. But, you know, in terms of business continuity planning and resiliency, Jerry, You had some thoughts when we were preparing. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think what was really interesting to see how our own business continuity plans ultimately worked out. I think it's not a big secret that until recently, a lot of companies did not necessarily take this all so seriously. It's like, yeah, sure, we have a BCP plan. Yeah, we practice it. We do the tabletop. We just want to do all those things because you know what, the auditors make us. Right. At the end of the day, however, it's like there's sometimes what I've seen, and not just one company, not just any sector, generally a somewhat lackadaisical approach to business continuity and disaster recovery in certain kind of areas. I think what we've definitely seen is like as we were looking at our own plans, and it's like then making sure that we can adopt them to the current situation. There's always something to be learned. It's like they're never straightforward. It's like even if you have a tabletop that did talk about a massive work from home kind of situation, maybe not necessarily in context of a pandemic, you always learn more things, especially as you go through those kind of events. And what we found is to be extremely effective is like as we are now going through this, and as we are recording pretty much every meeting that is topical to this thing, we have to update our plans on the go, and we have to really get those kind of learnings in place in order to be able to be prepared for another situation. I think this kind of agile approach to making sure that we have the understanding and the learnings from these kind of events really will help us down the future. And it's like it's something that I can really only encourage every company to do. A key element of this was really around our awareness kind of programs, and it's like reaching out to employees. We've been doing that on a regular basis, and we've been very lucky to really reach everyone within an extremely short period of time, days literally. From an IT perspective, from a security perspective as well, and from a what do I do now? And it's like been providing the kind of tools to our employees because we have been planning for a work from home scenario. It was actually more of a like what happens if a major nor'easter strikes in Boston that could happen, right? So it's like transferring this over is like is something that is critically important and really helps companies drive forward. And I think that is one of the big learnings from this whole exercise that we've been doing right now. BCPs and DR plans are going to be significantly more important and playing a bigger role in terms of like driving your business and making it more resilient.
No doubt, Jerry, you're spot on there. It's, you know, we continue to say we play like we practice. We don't pick the team the day of the game, and whether it's a simulated cyber attack, business disruption, a pandemic, we're never going to have the crystal ball, but having those measures in place. And I know, Susan, when we were preparing as well, we look, you know, more and more we continue to hear that phishing has spiked as much as in a blink of an eye, as I said earlier, we're in that whole work from home mode or work from anywhere for that matter. There's a number of considerations that have to be taken into place. And I know you had a lot of good thoughts on that. If you could share some of those, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, just to tap into the awareness and phishing realm, I think that's vitally important. The criminals are taking advantage of this new situation, right? There's scams abound, and just having that constant contact with employees to have them understand what threats are out there, right? There's always that angle of looking at threats, making sure they're really diligent about looking at emails and clicking, making sure that staff is now aware of their surroundings too in the home, making sure that their own networks are secure, making sure that their own IoT devices are taken care of. The larger enterprises will have lots of mechanisms on a person's laptop, may need to have some additional data loss prevention controls, right? Because all of a sudden we've had to open up print, things like that. The analysis and monitoring that a SOC might do that entails behavioral analysis, right? Behavior's now changed. Working longer hours, working different hours, working differently, right? So it kind of turns on its head some of those monitoring aspects. So I think there's a lot of things, you know, CISOs and security organizations have to be agile anyway to accommodate threats, to accommodate new controls, but lots has happened all at once. The business strategies change. the threat landscape has changed, the technology landscape has changed, the big adjustment all at once. But there's a suite of controls that the enterprise has that can be tweaked to accommodate. But I think the employee aspect is really most important. Staying in touch with the employee, that's where the biggest weakness is going to lie in this new model, and the vigilance will be key.
Fantastic. Thanks for those points, Susan. And you mentioned one on the employee. They're the Achilles heel of any security program or even enterprise security. You could have all the technology in the world, all the professionals like we have on this panel, and all the process, but at the same time, all you need is that proverbial click on the link, and it can come down like a house of cards. We've seen still ransomware attacks that we're helping companies with. You mentioned the phishing. Another point, you look at BYOD, or even, a lot of times companies have had controls in place for situations where you can't insert a USB stick. You mentioned data loss prevention, or you've got controls in place that an employee can't print over the Wi-Fi to their home printer. And we've seen situations where an employee will just email it to their personal account and print it, and you take a step back and like, okay, that wasn't the intention of that control. But Jonathan, I know when we were speaking, some of the things you threw out, what CISOs, we're stabilized right now, we're operating. What are a couple, 2, 3 things that CISOs can do as we continue to move forward through this? We're stabilized, but now that the criminals know what's going on, we're a remote workforce and relying limited teams and so forth. What are some things that CISOs can do as we move forward?
So I think you're right. What surprised me most during this pandemic was what didn't happen. The carriers and the service providers were able to scale. To large part, the enterprises were able to maintain continuity. What did surprise me was the failure rate in security awareness training. And so everyone scaled up their awareness training as more folks moved remotely, and there were a couple of security vendors which released their results of their employees, and the failure was on the rate of 1 in 5. Now, going into the pandemic, the failure rate was at 4%, 4 out of 100. And so we've seen more and more people being phished, even security professionals being phished. And what that tells you is, as we go to a more remote working strategy, is that what we used to call enterprise-grade features and functions now need to be extended to wherever the data and the users are. So in the case of what Fortinet calls the Uber users, the higher privilege users, the leadership teams, they may need SD-WAN at their home. Our CMO has stated publicly he's got SD-WAN in his home. He's got 2 ISPs because he needs to ensure application awareness, application WAN optimization, along with security functions, right? And so I think one of the things the CISOs need to do is to review their data and process classification plans. Make sure they did account for everything. Do they need to tweak anything? Do they find any new dependencies that they hadn't accounted for before? How do they address that? They need to ramp up their security for the remote users. And they need to think about platform consolidation. Because yes, there's more and more technologies and more complexity. One of the best ways of doing that as we move forward is to consolidate platforms around the idea of hyperscale operations. Millions of simultaneous requests for access and sessions and transactions that all need to be logged and monitored and analyzed for anomalous behavior, which Susan said so rightly. How do you monitor for anomalous behavior when everything is anomalous in the first 6 weeks, right? And then finally, I think as we move out of this pandemic, CISOs really need to think about what NIST said in week 2, which is that we now operate in a hostile, multidimensional operating environment called cyberspace. And the presumption is that your network has been compromised, your devices have been compromised, and you're actively being attacked by elements that you own. So as a CISO trying to implement a reasonable level of care, yes, I have identified and managed risk. You also need to account for the risks that you're likely have already been owed. So those are the top 3 things.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jonathan. And I know we're short on time. Just to close on point, I want to throw it out to Jerry on, some of the pieces. One of the points Hugo made earlier about, embracing this with the business, as much as for the most part, you hear about all these different things, whether it's the ransomware that we talked earlier, the employees, the things that, phishing, spiking. But I think, from what we're seeing is the companies that are going to embrace this, the companies that embrace new technologies 10 years ago, the cloud and so forth, the companies that are going to accelerate their digital transformation, the companies that are going to embrace the remote workforce are the ones that are going to excel. You know, Jerry, with what your company does and the background and things that what's one thing as we wrap it up that you see going forward?
I think what we're going to be definitely seeing going forward is that the traditional office networks are going to crumble. It's like, I think the whole idea that it's like I am in a special place and as such I have certain types of access rights or not, that is truly a thing of the past, and the zero trust kind of model is going to be absolutely prevailing across the board. It's like you've definitely seen this before already. It's like there's a lot of people have already been starting to roll this out in different kind of ways. But I think this whole thing is really going to accelerate this significantly, and drive the notion of no longer trusting endpoints, no longer trusting networks, no longer trusting anything really right now when it comes to access to your critical resources. I think what this also will do down the road is, like, as we are de-emphasizing certain type of technological controls, is that people are going to be more at the center of what the security is truly about. And this is how it should have been, like from the first go. It's not the latest mousetrap that you install or the coolest new toy that you put up somewhere that actually provides you with reasonable security. It's really a consensus across all the participants in your networks, in your organization, that security is a significant part of what needs to be done, and is a part of the foundation truly of any kind of successful enterprise. So from that perspective, I think these two things together is like are really going to be, they're actually going to be co-constituent in some way, so in order to help us to go for the next wave.
Hey, Gerald, great job.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. Rocco, great job. I want to thank the panelists, Jay, Jonathan, Susan, awesome. And just invite all of the participants, that speakers that were here today, back to the program. If you want to turn your cameras on, you're welcome to do that. A big thanks, guys. What a great, successful summit. The 2020 virtual Boston CIO, CISO and CIO Executive Leadership Summit, reimagining the business and the future of work. Big thanks to our speakers and our partners, Nutanix, Illumio, Zoom, Adobe, and Fortinet. Really appreciate your support to the network. Nikki's got some results from the poll. I think, Nikki, you're going to jump back in. 54% would be very distributed. 70-30 split between remote and office. That's an interesting dynamic. So, hey, look, again, thanks everyone for your engagement and support. Please spread the word. I think that we have a different angle, a different space that we're carving out here. Lead, reimagine, reinvent. The whole customer experience, the whole business model, the whole workforce stack, the reimagine, reinvent, the whole workplace. That's where you want to come to us for that space. We'll be publishing more research and talking more about it into the future. Again, thanks so much. Really appreciate it, everyone. Have a great day and stay safe.